This is a glorious day. Day of judgment.
A second trailer for the upcoming 28 Years Later dropped very early this morning, and it has once again chilled me to the bone. This movie is going to give this adult man nightmares. Today's trailer is making me think a lot about how the original creators of this series are undoing the tonal differences presented in 28 Weeks Later. So is that original sequel still canon? And how will Alex Garland bring back the tone that made the first movie so special? Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and my greatest irrational fear is getting cornered by a group of zombies. I'm terrified of them even though they don't exist. Yet. Just to do a little recap, 28 Years Later is the third installment in the 28 Blanks Later franchise that reteams the original writer and director Alex Garland and Danny Boyle respectively. It's kicking off a planned trilogy all written by Garland with different directors attached to each new film. Nia DaCosta, for instance, who helmed Candyman 2021, will be directing the bony sequel, and the third film will only come to fruition if these two make money. Based on the hype alone for this first movie, I'm sure we'll be fine in that department. The haunting plot description reads, "It's been almost 3 decades since the Rage virus escaped a biological weapons laboratory, and now, still in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amidst the infection. One such group of survivors lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single heavily defended causeway. When one of the group leaves the island on a mission into the dark heart of the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and the horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors as well." The second trailer for 28 Years Later came out at 3 a.m. Eastern Time this morning. What the hell? Can we just release trailers at noon like normal people? That's like lunchtime for most people who work. That's the only thing I have to complain about regarding this new trailer though. The second trailer did not fail to scare, as this one may be even more unsettling than the initial record breaker. We got some undead jump scares and some better shots of the infected that are pure nightmare fuel. In all of the marketing so far, there seems to be a big focus on this little island community and how it runs. I'm thinking this little island is going to get swarmed by the time we get to the third act by way more intelligent undead than what we've seen in previous entries, but that is just speculation for now. Going along with that plot description though, Ralph Fiennes has a really interesting line in this new trailer.
There are many kinds of death, and some are better than others.
This seems to be in reference to how the infected have mutated alongside the survivors. Fans of this series might be asking themselves two big things. What are those changes, and hasn't this franchise already done something like that before, Jake? I don't know the answer to the first question, but yes to the second one. 28 Weeks Later presented a few things that were seemingly based on ideas from Days. The infected starved out after having no one to eat, seemingly ending the oncoming apocalypse, and introduced the idea of carriers. The entire plot of Weeks revolves around the mother of 2 children who miraculously survived the harsh apocalypse, only to be revealed through the infamous kiss of death scene to still be carrying the virus. This, of course, unleashes the infected across the island once again. Now, I really enjoyed 28 Weeks Later. The second half of that movie is complete batshit insane, but it is a subtle departure from that original flick. 28 Days Later is an angry film filled with social commentary that still ends on a positive note, where Weeks is thematically the opposite. Weeks offers up a chance for humanity that's blown to smithereens and ends with an extremely hopeless setup for a worldwide takeover. I really do love that final shot of 28 Weeks Later, watching the infected run into Paris, but it sort of does undermine one of the biggest themes from the original film. Director Danny Boyle would argue that 28 Days Later is not a zombie film because it's focused less on juvenile gore and more on the social themes presented. I don't entirely agree with this comment because the godfather of the modern toxic zombie, George Romero, always had social commentary in his original trilogy, whether he meant to do that or not. Inherently, the best zombie flicks are thematic and typically deal with social issues.
Don't worry about him, I can handle him. Probably be a lot more of them as soon as they find out about us.
My interpretation of the original flick in a general sense is that it's bringing all of the awful things you hear about happening elsewhere in the world, in a metaphorical sense of course, straight to your doorstep. It's saying that if this were to happen in a first world country, there would actually be people responding to it. That's where the tragedy comes in. Unfortunately, not as many people are going to care if an atrocity is happening on the other side of the world. 28 Days Later may seem like it has a happy ending, but it's shedding light on a bigger issue at hand. It's why I think there were efforts to fight for the ending that that made it to the film itself, and not the 3 alternate endings that were shot that featured Jim dying across the board. I think a more in-your-face tragic ending wouldn't have had that same specific feeling that Alex Garland was going for with this one. On the surface, these 3 characters made it out alive, but had it happened somewhere else, they probably wouldn't have. I see this same energy being harnessed in 28 years later, but with some more modern commentary. Days was written well before cultural events like the War on Terror changed society forever. I mean, they were literally shooting that first movie when 9/11 happened. We can gather from Garland's comments on the original sequel that this movie will likely keep the apocalypse contained to England with thematic purpose. So if the infected did make it to Paris in 28 weeks later, it was likely contained shortly after and will not affect the new narrative. It would kind of go against the themes and purposes of where they're trying to get back to here. Considering that the political landscape of the world is vastly different than it was 25 years ago, that change will likely be seen in this new movie with however the infected have mutated. The world is in a much more paranoid place right now, and people are way angrier now than they were back then. Fascist leaders are being elected all around the world, and you can't go anywhere without seeing some sort of protest about it. In terms of how that's going to affect the undead in this movie, they might simply make them more intelligent, more durable, and harder to kill than they were before. Maybe Ralph Fiennes' quote about how some deaths are better than others refers to the specificity of this version of the undead. I've been saying zombies this entire video, but technically these are people who are still alive and their rage has just been boosted to unfathomable levels. Imagine a disease that is forcing you to attack people consciously and infect them for almost 3 decades. Can't that be seen as an allegory for how hate is spread in our modern world? Fear-mongering people into believing something they wouldn't otherwise? Is that not worse than death, becoming something you don't mean to be? That is the one thing I am certain we're going to be seeing in this movie that differs from the last film we got in this franchise. 28 years later arrives on June 20th of this year, and I cannot wait for it. It is going to be so depraved. Well, this has been a way less silly video than usual. We certainly got into some tough topics. So let's take our minds off of the decline of the modern world. Here are some videos of my cats when they were kittens. Hey everybody, before we wrap up this new video, please make sure to subscribe for more horror updates just like this. We're covering everything on this page, from Final Destination Bloodlines to weapons from Zach Krager, who made Barbarian just a few years ago. So make sure to give that little red button a tickle. Also, check out my horror gaming channel GullGotha if you want to see Freddy Fazbear in the game Repo. The latest video over there is probably my favorite so far. So what do you want to see in 28 years later? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching. Please subscribe. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.